Today, I'm going to show you how to replace the game card slot and headphone jack for the Nintendo Switch Lite. I am going to lay the Switch on a towel just to protect the screen and make it a little bit easier to work on. First, we're going to start by removing the 4 screws on the back. The 4 screws on the back are Y00. Now we can move on to the 2 screws on either side of the USB port and the 2 screws on the top. We're going to switch our bit. That is going to be 00 Phillips. Now that all the screws are removed, we can remove this back plate. To remove the back plate, I'm going to use a pick, but you can use any prying tool. And I start down here at the bottom where the speaker is. And you just want to get in between the 2 pieces. So you'll see right there, I'm going to go right in between there. And there's little plastic tabs in here that you need to separate. So just go a little bit this way, then come back over on this side and do the same thing. Now we can lay it down, maybe try and get a little bit more up on either side. The first time you do this is going to definitely be more difficult than what you saw from me, just because I've done this before on this machine. Once you have the sides up, the next thing you really want to be worried about, you'll see there's a crack already on mine. That piece breaks really easily if you do this incorrectly. So you just want to lift up and try and pry this top piece away. So I like to start over here just because that is so delicate. And you'll see just kind of wedging it very gently allows you to lift off. Okay, there's the back shell removed. Now that that's removed, we can remove this metal plate. This metal plate's going to remain Phillips. You're going to have Phillips for the rest of the screws. And this metal plate has 1, 2, 3, 4 screws. 4 total screws to remove this plate. There's a couple that are in here that do not need to be removed to remove this plate. So let's start with this top corner. Then we got the bottom right. The middle here underneath the fan. And then I wanted to do this one last because this screw is actually different. So keep that in mind when you're putting it back together. This screw is actually a different color. It's like a yellow gold and it's longer. And that's the one right here. All right, now when we lift off this metal plate, it's going to give you some resistance because there is thermal paste. And I'll show you that in a second. But just kind of wiggle it free. And there's your first spot of thermal paste. And that's on top of the heat pipe. Now that's kind of a thermal putty, so keep that in mind. It's different than the rest of the thermal paste. Now that the metal shield's been removed, we can go ahead and replace the game card slot and the headphone jack. They are on one connection. First step is disconnect the battery. To disconnect the battery, we do need to disconnect this ribbon cable. So to do that, you're just going to lift up on this little lock, white lock right there, and then pull that ribbon cable out. And there we go. Now you can take a plastic pry tool and just get underneath that battery connection, wedging it underneath, and lift up. There we go. Battery's disconnected. Once the battery's disconnected, we can move on to the game card slot. What you're going to see is there's a ribbon cable right here. It does go underneath the heat pipe, but we should be able to do this without removing that heat pipe. So we do have 7 screws holding this in. Technically, these are 2 separate boards, but they connect on the same ribbon cable. Let's go ahead and remove the screws. Once those screws are removed, we can go ahead and lift up the lock for the ribbon cable. And this is just going to lift out. And you're going to want to pull this way to get that ribbon cable to come out. Okay? And you'll see you've got the game card slot and the headphone jack. They are separate boards, but they're using the same ribbon cable. So just be careful. You don't want to rip this cable or anything like that. Now there's nothing wrong with this piece, so I'm going to go ahead and put that right back in, but obviously you'll have a new one to install. So to install this, I'm going to go ahead and come from this side and just kind of slide it into place. And actually, if we're lucky, bam, I'm going to be able to slide it right into that and close the lock. And that's it. So I actually made that pretty easy with how firm that connector is. And then this is going to push into place on this little metal riser right there. And the headphone jack will just sit in place too. All right, let's put the screws back in. And that's it, guys. Now that we've done that, I'm going to go ahead and kick you to some previous footage of me putting everything back together. We're going to reconnect the battery. So first, just push the battery connector back into the connection. And then we're going to put this ribbon cable back in. So just make sure that little white lock is up. And then push the ribbon cable into place. Okay, you'll see it's in place because the gold kind of disappears inside the connector. And then just push the lock down. And now we can put the metal shield back on. And placement's key here. You don't want to get that thermal paste all over the place. All right, let's go ahead and screw this back together. Now going back to that different longer yellow screw, we're going to do that one first. And that goes over here on the left. Then we got 3 more screws. And now we're ready to put the back shell on. So first I'm going to flip this up and get this power button fixed. It just slides in there. There's little plastic tabs on either side that it slides into. So nothing too crazy. All right, so to put the back shell on, we're going to do the reverse. So we're going to start at the top. And again, being very careful of this tiny little spot here. So I'm covering it up. But there's that crack I've already made. You don't want to do that. You don't want to crack your shell. So you're just going to get underneath the triggers while being on top of all these buttons here and kind of sinking in. It is a little tricky, but if you are patient with it, you should be able to push it right into place. And you'll kind of hear it snap and kind of fit. Okay. Then we're going to check. Once we do that, we're going to go up here and check. Because see how I have that gap? So I didn't do it right. And if you can't get, oh, there we go. So I was able to just put a little pressure and get rid of that gap. If not, you want to take it off and put it back on. All right. So now that that gap is closed up for the most part, you can see it squeezes together. Now we can go to the bottom and you're just going to push the little friction fit and we're snapped into place. We'll take a look around. You'll see my side there is not perfect. So we might have to start this over. Or is that going to pull in? No, that'll pull in with the screw in this corner, so I'm not going to worry about it. All right, let's go ahead and put the screws in and make sure everything looks good. I'm going to go ahead and zoom out for you guys. Figure I'm a little tight. So for screws, let's start with the Phillips. And the Phillips are going to be for the top and bottom. The other negative of these screws on the outside, they are not magnetic. So they're a little bit of a pain because you can't just stick them to your screwdriver. Also be very careful with these tiny screws. See, I keep forgetting they're not magnetic. Be very careful with these tiny screws. They will strip extremely easy. And then you see how I've got that little gap there? Just pull it in and then tighten your screw. Should be good. Yeah, there we go. So I still have a little gap up there, which I don't love. So I might end up taking this apart. Or let's see if I can just take my pick and fix that. Yeah, see how there's a big bump there? That's not what we want. Let's see if I can fix it with my pick. If I can't, aha, I was able to fix it with my pick. There we go. If not, you'll have to just take that back plate off and put it back on. Because it wasn't magnetic, I dropped that screw and I can't find it. So we're gonna move on and just keep going. Now all we've got left is the 4 on the back. We're gonna switch back to our double Y. And again, these are not magnetic as well. So don't lose them. And everything's put back together. So we're just going to take a look around, make sure all the seams look good, make sure there's no gaps, and then also just press on the buttons. I hope this video helped. If you did enjoy it, make sure to like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.